Happy to be tougher. Look, I think it is deeply irresponsible what Richard Tice is doing, and I think, frankly, it's playing politics with people's jobs and people's bills. And for all of the workers who rely on working in clean energy, to the nuclear workers at Hinkley Point, indeed future nuclear workers at Sizewell, to those working on carbon capture and storage, to those working on offshore wind, to those working right across this sector, which, as I said earlier, the net zero sector grew 3 times faster than the economy as a whole, and goodness knows we need these jobs and we need this growth. It is deeply, deeply irresponsible. And as I say, I think when it has come into contact with reality, you've even got reform mayors now saying, well, we're distancing ourselves from this, essentially. And it's not where the British people are. I don't think the British people do want a culture war on this. I actually think people want the benefits of clean energy. They think it's the right thing for the country. We've got to do it, and we're determined to do it in a way that makes the pressures on people's living standards easier, not harder. But honestly, I think it's deeply, deeply irresponsible. I actually don't think it'll work either.
So, your role, your department's role, is to provide certainty to the market. We heard repeatedly in the delays on announcing your position on REMA, even led us, the committee, to write a letter to you. What have you learned from that process? Because clearly we heard from businesses they were not going to invest in contracts of difference because of the uncertainty, and it has slowed down investment in the sector. So what have you learned from that process, and how can we make sure we get decisions quicker from the department?
Well, look, the thing I would say to you is REMA was an incredibly complicated process, an incredibly complicated piece of work, and it was really, really important we got it right. We said the end of last year that we would announce a REMA decision in time for the opening of the AR7 auction, which is at the beginning of August. We've done that. We've fulfilled the commitment. I think it's been widely welcomed by the industry that frankly, where uncertainty was the enemy of investment. And so, we are absolutely committed to timely decision making and correct decision making, and sometimes you need to make sure you really need to kick the tires, particularly on something like this kind of reform.
And I guess there is a challenge that when you go quickly, you can get misalignment of government processes and decisions. And Jeremy, in our report, Gridlock or Growth, we were quite critical of the work of the department and the lack of kind of engagement and transparency with this committee as we tried to deliver our inquiry. What has the department learned from that, and can we see better working with our committee, particularly where you're working at pace?
As the Secretary of State says, we're very happy to work with you to find the best way possible to work collaboratively with you. It's obviously a very, very important part of holding the department to account. I feel that as permanent secretary, and it's also part of consultation and getting better quality policy outcomes as a result.
Do you recognise in that, as we picked out Gridlock for Growth, there's definitely misalignment between this committee and the department, and can you assure us that we won't see that in future?
Our job is to do everything we can to serve the government of the day, but that does include obviously taking into account the views of this committee very, very carefully, and that is the commitment that I will give. We will consider all recommendations with absolute clarity.
And I think, Mike, you've in a way answered your own question partly as well, if I can put it this way, which is we are dealing with this sort of dilemma of doing things at pace, but doing things in a collaborative way. And if you think about the list I gave at the beginning, which is a very partial list of the things we've done over the last year, it has involved acting at speed, move fast and build things, as I say. And so, if sometimes it hasn't meant that the committee has been consulted as perhaps it might have wanted to be, that is the explanation. Now, I'm sure we can always find ways of improving, but this is one of the challenges of moving at pace. If I'm honest, I think government finds it hard to move at pace in general. And in a sense, we've been trying to move things along because we recognise the urgency in a whole number of respects.
And my final question, this theme of certainty. During the election, a very clear pledge from the Labour Party on £300. there's been a lot of criticism of the department and the government of dropping that direct commitment, and you'll probably tell me you haven't. Is that £300 off people's energy bills still a firm commitment from this government?
Look, we said we would cut people's bills by up to £300, and that remains a commitment. It was based on independent modelling. The key thing is that what we need to do is move to a system that can cut bills for good. And the way to do that is with the lower wholesale prices that renewable energy will bring.
Thank you. Luke Murphy.
Thank you very much. My question leads nicely on from what Mike was asking there, because the government obviously has the commitment to make electricity cheaper. You've clearly set out through your Clean Power plan that the main driver of that will be reducing dependence on volatile fossil fuels. But do you worry that if the government is unable to deliver some of that benefit within this Parliament to quite a wide span of consumers, that Richard Tice might effectively persuade people that somehow renewable, the drive for clean power, is to blame?
Well, look, here's the interesting thing, Luke, is, and I want to just sort of expand a little bit on my thinking here. We've got the, if you like, the sort of top-down commitment around up to £300 by 2030, but we don't need to wait to 2030 to start delivering benefits to people. So let me just give you some examples. The Warm Homes discount, 3 million families, £150. 3 million extra families, just to be clear, 2.7 million extra families getting £150 off their bills this winter, not in 2030, but this winter. 5 million people by 2030 getting lower bills as a result of the Warm Homes Plan. Partly the investment through the Warm Homes Plan, and partly the regulation, energy efficiency standards, private rented sector, social rented sector, and so on. And that's just the beginning. I mean, I'll give you my particular interest, one particular interest that I've got at the moment, which is, I think it's something like 1.7 million, I'd have to check the figure, families have solar panels on their rooftops in the UK at the moment. I mean, we are just in the foothills of what we can do. And this is all about bringing, and we announced that for new homes, solar panels will be fitted as standard. That's a few £100 off people's bills, just on its own. So we're going to deliver this two ways. We're going to deliver it by 2030, and we're also I'm also absolutely determined that we deliver in the meantime and convert that clean power benefit to people. I mean, I'll give you another example. What we're doing for schools and hospitals is not about consumers, is for 200 schools, 200 hospitals cutting their energy bills, and we want to make that scheme bigger. And ever since that scheme launched, I've got lots of people saying, what about sports clubs? What about miners' welfares? What about this? What about that? So, and I'm really in the market for this. The point is, and this is what's interesting about the reform mayors, is they themselves see, I think it's swimming pools, leisure centres and so on, solar panels, they themselves see, well, why would we be against this? This is just going to cut people's bills. Why not use the free resource that we have to cut people's bills?
Are you looking at other measures that might reduce bills in the near term? So ideas like rebalancing levies, for example,